Welcome back. For each of the sessions that I teach, I like to give you a real-world example of programming that you can use what you've learned that we've covered so far in class to build for your own. So for this session, we got lucky enough to have Flappy Bird as a good example. And we talked in class about this application where it got so popular, the developer ended up taking it down. But you'll see it's really very simple. And what we're going to do is take a quick look at how it looks to play the game, and then we're going to switch over to an example I built in Scratch that uses all of the building blocks that we've covered so far in the 8 hours we spent together in this Saturday series. So here's a look at how the game works. You can see it's a little bird that flies along, and what he does is he's trying to avoid hitting the pipes, and he jumps up. The background stays the same, and the pipes scroll over to the left, and he loses points when he touches them. So pretty simple. I'm going to switch over to Scratch, because what Scratch has done, allows us to do is it allows us to add very simple event handlers and conditions and operators and variables where you can pretty much build this game yourself. So I wanted to walk through this with you. I've shared this to the class studio under the name of Flappy Clone, because when you take somebody else's project, and you've already seen this in Scratch, and remix it into the Scratch environment, or just in general recreate the elements of it, it's called a clone. So what I did is I cloned Flappy here by going to the editor screen and just filling in the little boxes by the colors that corresponded to his outline and his eye and his mouth and his wing. So you see here we have 3 event handlers used in this game. We have when green flag is clicked, and for that sprite, and we have 2 other sprites, very simple. We have when the space bar is pressed, and we have when, going back to Flappy here, when this sprite is clicked. Simple enough. So basically when I click on him, he is going to jump, and I'll show you what block controls that. And when we click the green flag, the score sets to 100 and the time sets to 30. So what I've built this as a game where you start with 100, and every time he touches either sprite 1 or sprite 2, the score goes down by 1. And you have 30 seconds to see what score you end up with. And also I have a loop, and we've seen here the forever condition, which is a loop, which allows him to look like he's flying. And you'll see for him I have 2 costumes. I created one where his wing was down and the other where his wing was up. And so when you click on the green flag, it gives him sort of the appearance of flying. So we also have the weight condition that we used here. We go in this block area here. So that controls weight. We use to control the costume that makes him look like he's flying. And we also have the wait 1 second to change the time. That's another example of wait. And we also have wait until, which is a definition that tells Scratch, well, what's supposed to happen? And in this case, I used wait until to end the game. So starting the time at 30, saying that when the time is 0, stop all. So that's meaning that that's your sort of your session. Each time you're trying to see what your high score can be. And we also have an if statement that we built into these guys, which are the collision sprites. So saying, again, forever, this is the loop, if, and this is saying, oh, hey, here comes the logic. And in this case, this block controls the pipes moving to the left, and when it gets to this x coordinate, -204, then I say hide, which gives the appearance of the pipe starting back over to the right side and coming back at Flappy, which is controlled by clicking on the space bar, show it at its set position here, X is 280, Y is negative 1T7. And then also the spacebar controlling forever, moving it to the left, which is meaning changing X by negative 4. So as you can see, these are all elements that we've covered in class. I'll go ahead and click on the timer here, or the flag here, the event handler, and you can see I've got the costume starts, which is what the programming controls. And just to control this, I'm going to show you, if you click on him, he jumps up. And you see that he goes up and he goes back down. Now the spacebar part hasn't happened yet, which I'm going to click now. And you can see what happens is it brings the little pipes up to him, and he's still at 100. Whoop, I just touched it. I lost 5 points. So I have to hit the spacebar again. Oops, the game ended here because I was talking. So after 30 seconds, I ended up with a score of 90, but only because I hit the spacebar once. So let's try this again. Okay. Here we go. So here we go. I'm going to hit the first one is easy, which is usually when you're making a game, you make the first element that something encounters a little bit easy. Then you kind of learn, whoops, and probably what I need to do is probably to make it a little bit more manageable. This game is make him, when we have him jump, which is controlled by this block here. So when I change the Y by 10, I could either have that be a greater number, so I can say change Y by 15, or I could have this wait be a little bit longer, so it gives it more hang time. So that, in a nutshell, covers, and you can see how simple that game is. Now, of course, to post something for the commercial market, meaning that's where people can actually download your game, takes a little bit more work. But I wanted to give you guys a pat on the back because we've covered a lot of material in the last 4 weeks. And for a lot of you, Scratch, this is the very first experience you've had with Scratch. I've saved this game to the studio, and I really want you guys to feel comfortable using that studio as a way to reference code that you'd like to use in your own game. It doesn't have to be the same characters, but as you know, if you go to the backpack, if you go to the studio and you open up Flappy Clone and you say, gosh, I want to build that kind of game, but I don't really want it to be Flappy Bird. And in fact, I did work with someone in class about this where she came up with her own scroll game, jump scroll game, I guess you could call it. So what we did for her was I ended up, and you can see here I've already done this with Flappy. If you we'll drag this one here. If I drag this over to my backpack, what that does is the backpack is available for any project that you open in your account. So you'll see, and it's taking a little bit of time here because it's got a lot of programming. And also we noticed the MIT servers were extremely slow this weekend, and I think that has to do with the really crazy snowy weather that we had, and they were probably working on backup generators, or maybe some intermittent electricity. So that would definitely affect server behavior. So you can see right now, I think they're still suffering from the effects of the weather. So while this is uploading, I'm going to go ahead and show you. There you go, it's done now. I'm going to go back to my stuff and open up a new project. And you'll see when I do that, that I then get, you can open up the backpacks off the screen, but I'm going to click on the little triangle. It didn't. It's still, actually, I think it's because of the server. There you go, server behavior recognized it. So you see now I have this sprite. So I'm going to get rid of a little Scratchy here because I don't want him. And you can see if I bring Flappy Bird up to my new project, he comes with all of his programming. And the same thing for this guy. If I bring him over, and you drag him down here to the bottom, he comes with his programming too. So it's a way for you to make the project your own. When you're first learning how to program, you're not going to remember each and every step that you have to drag over from this panel here, from the script panel. Once you get a couple hundred projects under your belt, maybe, but I would say it's totally acceptable and expected that when you're learning to program, that you're going to take a look at other people's projects, and you're going to take what we would call almost, you almost want to consider them recipes. You're going to take the recipe for the action that you would like to have happen in your project and do something like take a sprite over from another project, put it in your backpack, open up a new project, and that way you can control the background. You could even create a new sprite, and we've talked about this. When you create a new sprite, I'm going to pull it over, pull Bear over, and when you have a new sprite, and let's say a quick way to copy the programming of Flappy Bird and to put it on the bear would be to have Flappy Bird clicked and then drag his programming over to bear, and you'll see if you click on bear, he now gets Flappy Bird's programming. So it's kind of a shortcut way so that you don't have to get too overloaded in your brain about where things are. That'll come more naturally once you've had some more practice doing this. So I would say please rely on that. That's why we set the studio up, and that's why I've had you guys share your projects too, because I've certainly had you guys take a look at what's going around you and thinking, wow, that's a really cool character. I'd like to use that. So keep that in mind. And in our last class, we'll go ahead and do a recap and kind of remind you about the ways that you can use Scratch and ways that you might want to keep working on your projects from here and in the future. Until then, keep scratching.